I'm not presenting now. Abigail,
Good afternoon, participants. You're welcome to the IEPA-UCC webinar series. You're able to start at 2. But for the benefit of those who log on at 2, give yourself like 5 to 7 minutes, then we will start. Thank you for your patience and you're welcome. Thank you.
Max FM. Max FM. 89.7.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to the IEPA webinar series again. We are built to start at 2 o'clock, but for the benefit of latecomers who click and join at 2 o'clock, we just give them a few minutes, then we'll start. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Several conferences. And the other, okay, at the way. Hey. Yeah, waiting for you outside. Telling yes. Yes.
No.
Yeah, I'm married though. I am married. I know. Oh, I know. I don't want to keep it as I'm married. I thought you were. Hey, you are married. Hey. Oh, yes, sir. Hey. Hey. This was no balance. This is COVID-19.
Congratulations.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let me apologize for the break. We had some technical hitches which we had to go offline. So apologies for the break, but I think we are ready and able to start today's webinar. My name is Nanefua Roxanne. I'm the head of corporate communications and public relations at IEPA, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's webinar. Let me start by sharing my screen. So we have an idea. So today's topic, webinar topic, is very interesting because we all know that we've been impacted by COVID-19 and we are still reeling the aftermath of it in different ways. But in the educational sector, COVID-19 has also had a huge impact on us. And we are going to have two resourceful persons who are going to take us through COVID-19 and the educational leadership in Ghana, the paradigm shift. The topic in itself sounds exciting, so your guess is good as mine. And I believe at the end of this presentation and discussion, we would have learned a lot from it. Before I invite them to take the platform, let me just give you a gist as to how the webinar is going to go. I've already introduced myself, so my name is Anifa Roxanne. I'll give you a brief introduction of who we are at IEPA for the benefits of all those who today is your first time joining us for the webinar. And I also outline the sequence of events, and for those who would want certificates for this webinar, certificates are also available. Then I'll go ahead and introduce the speakers for today, and they'll take over with their presentation, and at the end we'll have question and answer session, and any final remarks will come. And I can guarantee you that we should be out here by 3:30 max. So, a little bit about who we are at IEPA. I would advise that we all mute ourselves whilst we join, even though I'm trying to do that, but let's kindly mute ourselves so we can all hear what is going on the platform. Right, so a little information about who we are at IEPA. IEPA stands for the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration, and it was established in August 1975 based on a joint agreement between the government of Ghana and UNESCO UNDP to build and strengthen capacity in educational planning and administration of experts and non-experts, and to inform educational policy formulation and implementation through research. And this has been the core of the Institute for the past 45 years and counting. In November 2020, IEPA officially became a UNESCO Category 2 Center for Excellence for the West Africa sub-region. And this was launched by the Honorable Minister for Education in June 2021, last year. What does it mean to be a UNESCO Category 2 Center? IEPA is to, among other things, build capacity of the workforce in the educational sector in the West African sub-region in the areas of educational planning, leadership and administration, as well as mobilize international and regional experts to provide technical assistance and policy advice to support sector-wide planning and policy development. So this webinar series is one of such events to build capacity of all of us geared towards the attainment of Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is on education. And if you want to know more about what we do and our academic programs, I will entreat all of us to visit our website, which is www.iepa.ucc.edu.gh to learn more about what we do at IEPA. So I did indicate that this webinar, you can get a certificate if you want to. So a certificate for the webinar costs 100 Ghana cedis, and you can send your money via Momo on 02077288812. And the name on the account is Rex Donto. You can also send us an email to IEPA.ocpr@ucc.edu.gh. It's the same email that you received your registration notification on, And you can send us an email if you want a certificate, and we will have a conversation with you in that regard. So if you apply for a certificate or request for one, you receive an electronic copy of your certificate via email. And when it's ready, we will send that to you. We do not print hard copies. If you want a hard copy certificate, then you would have to go out and print yourself, or it will come at an extra cost. So kindly note, and if you need a certificate, you can let us know. You can send a message on the page. You can send us an email for that regard. Thank you. So without much ado, I'm going to introduce the resource persons for today's webinar. They are in the persons of Mrs. Abigail Oduro and Ms. Dorcas Amartey. And I'm so excited because these ladies are so dynamic. They are IEPA PhD students, and they have actually exhibited a lot of resourcefulness. So it's exciting to have your students center stage to tell us what their research is all about. Mr. Kwashi, can you mute? Great. So a little information about our research persons. I'll start with Mrs. Abigail Oduro. So Mrs. Abigail Oduro is a PhD student in educational leadership with IEPA at the University of Cape Coast. She obtained her master's degree in higher education and student affairs administration from Beijing Normal University in China, where she was awarded the first prize for being the best international student and also the best graduating student from the National Union of Graduate Students, Beijing chapter. Mrs. Oduro also had her first degree at the University of Cape Coast, where she obtained a first-class honors in Bachelor of Education in Arts, which is English and Ghanaian language. And to her credit, she has published an article entitled The Influence of Social Media on Student Essay Writing. At the appropriate time, I'm going to ask her questions on that. In her professional life, Mrs. Oduro works with the Campaign for Female Education, Comfort, Ghana, as a learner facilitator. She also worked with the Ghana Statistical Service as the regional trainer and field supervisor for the 2020 Population and Housing Census. Her aspiration is to be a leader par excellence, and this is driven by her philosophy of hard work, determination, and diligence. This is driven by her philosophy that hard work, determination, and diligence leads to self-learning and success. So you're welcome, Mrs. Abigail Oduro. Thank you for being here. And her co-presenter is in the person of Ms. Dorcas Amartey. Ms. Dorcas Amartey is a PhD student in educational leadership, also at IEPA. And her philosophy is, excuse me for a sec. Thank you. Ms. Amartey's philosophy is Nia onim nusua uhu, which is the symbol of knowledge, lifelong education, and continued quest for knowledge. And Nia onim nusua uhu is an Edinkra symbol. And if you're wondering what Edinkra symbol it is, it's in the logo of the IEPA. That's the red background. Ms. Amartey attended the Abigail Secondary School. Sorry about that. Mr. Amartey attended Abigail Secondary School and then proceeded to the School of Languages, Ghana. Institute of Languages and Alliance Française to build her capacity in the French language. Thereafter, she went to the University of Education, Winneba, where she obtained a Bachelor of Education in French language, and later Village de Bunion, which is the University of Togo. The University of Togo for a top-up program in the French language. She holds a Master of Philosophy in Education, Educational Innovations and Leadership Science from the Institute of Distance Learning at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Kumasi. Career-wise, Ms. Amartey is a program officer at the Judicial Training Institute, Judicial Service of Ghana, where she coordinates workshops, seminars, and conferences for members of the judiciary, the judicial service, and stakeholders whose activity premise on justice delivery. She's also a trainer in gender-based violence and ethics and anti-corruption at the Judicial Training Institute, and a personal assistant to one of the members of the Advisory Committee on Nominations of Judges of the International Criminal Court. She also served as the secretary to the Board of Directors of the Judicial Training Institute from 2018 to the year 2019. You're welcome, Ms. Dorcas Amartey. So without much ado, participants, I'm going to hand over the platform for our beautiful, resourceful ladies to take us through their presentation for today. Thank you. So, Ms. Oduro, Mrs. Oduro, Ms. Amartey, your audience awaits you, and we are ready to learn. Thank you. So, Mrs. Oduro and Ms. Amartey, if you can unmute so that we can hear you.
Check the camera.
Rosten. Miss Rosten.
Hello.
Dorcas.
Abigail can hear you loud and clear. Dorcas?
Okay, please, Dorcas is starting. Dorcas, please, we cannot hear you.
Ms. Amartey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. And Dorcas, can I know the name you're using to sign in?
I have signed in with Solomon.
Solomon, okay, great. Thank you, because I got a bit confused. So we are ready for you.
Okay. Thank you once again, Ms. Roxton, for that heartwarming introduction. We are most grateful. And welcome all of you to today's presentation on COVID-19 and educational leadership here in Ghana. And we'll be taking a look at the paradigm shift. Our presentation will take this format. First and foremost, I'll walk you through a brief history of COVID-19. We'll take a look at its impact on the educational system and then the paradigm shift in teaching and learning. My colleague will take over and walk us through educational leadership before COVID and then delve into the paradigm shift during the height of the pandemic. Let's take a look at some of the changes that COVID-19 brought to our society. From our screens, we can talk of the observance of social distancing by persons at a conference or a seminar. We can also see some students wearing nose masks and the do's and don'ts of wearing a mask. We can also talk of the check of temperature before accessing a facility and a tree representing the online transaction that went on during the height of the pandemic. COVID-19 struck the world like a thunder in a hot afternoon. It is one of the most unpredictable global health crises that the world at large had to deal with in recent times. The World Health Organization in December 2019 was notified by the China Health Authority of recording multiple cases of pneumonia with an unknown cause. This virus was first detected in a patient's throat swab sample and was termed as severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, which was later dubbed by the World Health Organization as coronavirus disease 2019. Now let's come down to our part of the continent, that's Africa. Precisely, Egypt and Nigeria recorded their first cases on 14th and 27th February 2020, respectively. In our own case, Ghana recorded her first case a day after the World Health Organization had declared it a pandemic, and that was on the 12th of March 2020. According to the Ghana Health Service, 2 persons who had returned from Turkey and Norway tested positive for the virus, and this initiated contact tracing here in Ghana. Let's take a look at the impact of COVID on our educational system. Undoubtedly, the adverse effect of COVID-19 shook the economy and did not spare the educational sector. It had an impact on education, leading to the closure of schools right from the basic levels through to the university levels. A study by Joshua and Cornelius revealed that as of 27 April 2020, nearly 1.725 billion learners were out of school. Also, a report by UNESCO on COVID-19's disastrous influence on global education indicated that 1.38 billion students in 195 countries were also out of school. The graph on our screen is a report by UNESCO, and it clearly indicates the varying levels of dropout during the height of the pandemic. The first country to close its schools down and also reduce its working hours during the second week of March 2020 was a country of South Central Asia, and that's Britain. The adverse effects of COVID-19 led to the restructuring and redesigning of our educational system, which extended the academic calendar. The impact of COVID-19 shifted the core functions of schools and created an opportunity for our educational leaders to search for an alternative medium in disseminating the educational curriculum. The impact affected all learning institutions, and they were to discontinue the face-to-face sessions. In our own case, Ghana, COVID-19 brought His Excellency the President to our homes almost every Sunday evening. The presence of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was to inform the Ghanaian populace on measures he had taken to combat and curb the spread of the virus. The consistency in his address led to the popular phrase, fellow Ghanaians. On Sunday, 15th March 2020, His Excellency the President
Madam,
and placed a ban on all public gatherings and its related activities. This meant that all educational institutions, right from the basic level, the ban was declared. It was on the 16th of March 2020 till further notice. The ban on the sector necessitated the redesign our educational system. The impact of COVID-19 core functions of schools, and this meant that an alternative medium had to be searched for to continue with the educational curriculum. As mentioned earlier, most institutions had to close down, and this led to the opting of another means of teaching and learning. The effect of COVID-19 on an educational sector awoke the technological zeal in our leaders. Its impact highlighted and heightened the importance of online teaching and learning in the past. We also had some educational leaders developing guidelines to aid in teaching and learning. This new way of teaching and learning, of course, which existed before the pandemic, meant that teachers and staff who will be coordinating the online sessions needed to be trained. Similarly, the impact of COVID-19 could be seen as that system which will move education from face-to-face and most frequently to the digital form of learning. This could be seen as the educational revolutionary. Why? Because it pushed our educational leaders to search for an alternative means of continuing the educational curriculum. In life, every change comes with challenges, and COVID-19 is no exception. The challenge could either be positive or negative. COVID-19 did not only come with its negative aspects, but it also has some positives. We can talk of enhancing the ICT knowledge of our educational stakeholders and also harnessing the importance of the various remote forms of learning. A study by Okori, Matthew, and others on COVID-19's impact on education indicated that out of 250 students who participated, 206 complained of internet connectivity, 142 also mentioned inadequate time for discussion as a challenge, and also we had a few, that was 26, who indicated lack of personal touch. For some time now, I have talked about a brief genesis of COVID-19. We've also taken a look at its impact on education, and that is the closure of schools right from the basic through to the tertiary level, whether it fell within the public or the private sector. We've also looked at COVID-19 harnessing the importance of online teaching and learning, which of course existed before the pandemic, and also identified a few challenges that characterize the online teaching and learning. On our screen now is a pictorial view of the paradigm shift in teaching and learning. It clearly spells out the mode of delivery before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. Well, we can see the face-to-face session and also the blended learning forms, which connect the points I raised earlier, that the online teaching and learning existed before the emergence of COVID-19. Now, during COVID, we had most of our institutions going fully online. And then after COVID, in order to adhere to its protocols, we had the observance of social distancing during the face-to-face teaching and also the adoption of the asynchronous form of learning. Now, with the asynchronous form of learning, it's increased flexibility and availability to education, and it runs on a very easy schedule for students. So in this case, you could access educational materials from any location and at any point in time. It is now time for us to delve into educational leadership before the height of the pandemic, and also get to find out the paradigm shift that took place during COVID.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. At this juncture, I will take you through COVID-19 and educational leadership, where I would focus on the paradigm shift in educational leadership due to COVID-19. But before that, I would like to give a brief overview of what educational leadership is. Then I would delve into the kind of leadership that was in existence before COVID-19, as well as highlight on the challenges that leaders faced during the height of the pandemic. Then our focus for today, that is the paradigm shift in educational leadership due to COVID-19. Now, when we say educational leadership, it's basically the harnessing of resources from the various stakeholders in education and being able to move beyond the school to include others at the zonal, district, regional, and national level to help promote teaching and learning, and also applying the various principles of leadership in education. Now let's look at the kind of leadership that was in existence before COVID. Before COVID, the kind of leadership that was in existence in most schools could be seen as traditional, in the sense that the various roles and positions of leaders in schools were spelled out, where, for instance, the core purpose of head teachers or principals were fundamentally to run the school and to see to it that teaching and learning was most productive. However, COVID-19 is the impetus or the force for people to argue that a new set of leadership was needed to be prevalent in schools, as it called for leaders to rethink content creation and to establish communities of workers that would help enforce the new paradigm. Looking at the challenges that COVID-19 brought to educational leaders, in a study conducted by Sampert and Hazard to identify the challenges that school leaders encountered during COVID-19, three dominant challenges were identified to be prevalent among school leaders all over the world. And these challenges are the issue of catering for student well-being, the challenge of the online system of teaching and learning, and lastly, the challenge of financial constraints. Now, the paradigm shift. Based on research, 4 main paradigm shifts in educational leadership in Ghana due to COVID-19 were identified, and these are change in policies and practices of educational leaders, change in leaders' roles, change in budget planning, and lastly, change in leaders' skills. In discussing change in policies of educational leaders, before COVID-19, leaders had their own set of policies and practices, where, for instance, the University of Cape Coast had its own set of policies and practices in terms of its academic calendar, graduation ceremony, appointment and promotion of its staff, assessment modes, among others, which differed from that of the University of Legon. In the same vein, the various senior high schools and junior high schools leaders also had their own set of policies and practices. However, during the pandemic, leaders had to resort to policies and practices instituted by the president of the nation, where, for example, the president, through COVID-19 address to the nation, gave directives that all schools should be closed down, which distorted the already planned academic calendar by leaders, as well as affecting teaching and learning. As part of the closure of schools, there was also the cancellation of most activities and events like graduation ceremony planned by leaders, as well as the cancellation of examination, where, for example, the West African Senior School Certificate Examination Council on 23rd March 2020 had to indefinitely postpone the West African Senior School Certificate Examination due to the closure of schools. As part of the change in policies and practices, there was also change in instructional modalities, where the president gave directives that all schools should roll out the distance and remote form of teaching and learning. Now, looking at the change in policies and practices, it came with its own challenges. For example, the change in instructional modalities did not favor all students due to the issue of internet connectivity, as earlier highlighted by my co-presenter. Again, teachers and lecturers had already planned their face-to-face lesson plan, which included some form of activities that require students to be present. But based on the new directives, they had to resort to developing soft document presentations. There was also change in the number of hours that students spend in school, which had influence on the number of subjects to be taught per day. So this led to leaders restructuring the already planned timetable in order to suit the new directives. COVID-19 also led to the roles of leaders unexpectedly and dramatically changed. Leaders became like actors in a play. Leaders became like actors in a play during the pandemic, where the story, the script, and costumes are all changed mid-performance, and leaders are still on stage improvising new ways and means of adjusting to their new roles. The roles of leaders became too bureaucratic in the sense that leaders had to deal with the directives and regulations from the Ministry of Education.
So Ghana insurance was in Nigeria.
Hello, someone is giving us feedback. Okay.
Oh, you're
touching on.
Abigail.
Hello, Madam Host. Please, can you mute him? Okay, thank you. So touching on the change in the roles of leaders. Touching on the change in roles of leaders. Touching on the change in the roles of leaders. Leaders became like actors in a play during the pandemic, where the story, the script, and costumes are all changed mid-performance, and leaders are still on stage improvising new ways and means of adjusting to their new roles. COVID-19 led to the roles of leaders becoming too bureaucratic, in the sense that leaders had to deal with the Ministry of Education's regulations and circulars, as well as health protocol from the Ministry of Health. So leaders had to deal with these directives without any further explanations given to teachers, parents, and other stakeholders in education. Again, few leaders were given thorough training, support, and clear guidelines in relation to the expectations of their new roles. And looking at the bureaucratic nature of the roles of leaders, it led to ineffective communication between leaders, teachers, and other stakeholders in education, as the leaders had to just issue instructions without any essential interaction and communication. And a key insight from this is that leaders in the various educational institutions, they are the carriers of the vision, of which they could decide with teachers, parents, and other stakeholders in education. So it was very critical for the Ministry of Education to just spell out the expectation of leaders so that they could carry out their usual roles, rather than them being stakeholders and just representatives of the Ministry of Education during the pandemic. Also, leaders have important perspectives when it comes to the challenges that they face in their schools. So it was very critical for their voice to be incorporated in defining their new roles during the pandemic. Another change that occurred in leadership is the change in budget planning of leaders. COVID-19 brought immediate and unexpected financial constraints in educational institutions, which had influence on the budget planning of leaders. Leaders had to decline resources as the existing resources were utilized in fighting against the pandemic. So leaders had to restructure the already planned budget in order to tackle issues like advocating for Wi-Fi increments, purchasing of nose masks, hand sanitizers, Veronica buckets, among others, in order to help fight against the pandemic. So looking at the change in budget planning of leaders, it led to the salaries of most employees being reduced. And this was most prevalent in private educational institutions. And in a study or a report by UNICEF, it was identified that 20 to 50% of salaries of those in the private educational institutions were reduced due to the pandemic. Again, most salaries of employees were reduced in the government sector as well as employees being laid off with regards to the pandemic and due to the change in budget planning of leaders. In discussing the last paradigm shift in educational leadership in Ghana due to COVID-19, that is the change in leader skills. Based on our review of 14 professional blogs and reports published online during the height of the pandemic, it was identified that leaders needed to possess new set of skills in order to fight against the pandemic. So the proponents of these new set of skills were of the view that COVID-19 could be seen as a turbulent time, as it came unexpectedly in the educational institutions, and leaders had to devise new ways and means of fighting against it. Could be seen as diluted workforce of either individuals and teams. Looking at the bureaucratic roles of leaders, it led to ineffective communication between leaders, teachers, and other stakeholders in education, as well as looking at the closure of schools. Leaders, teachers, parents, and students were being dispersed in different locations. So it led to distributed workforce of either individuals and teams. And COVID-19 also required leaders to be resilient in order to fight against the pandemic. So in looking at leaders leading in turbulent times, they needed to possess some set of skills, and that is being able to think strategically, being able to make swift decisions, and also being able to change management and reinvent new ways and means of doing things. With regards to leaders leading distributed workforce of either individuals or teams, they needed to possess the skill of being able to have emotional intelligence, also being able to encourage teachers, parents, and other stakeholders in education, as well as being able to analytically communicate issues to parents, teachers, and other stakeholders in education, as well as the skills spelled out here. With regards to leaders being resilient, they needed to lead the organization with great sense of humility and also having some form of self-care. So far I've touched on COVID-19 and educational leadership, where the focus was on the paradigm shift in educational leadership due to COVID-19. I started by giving a brief overview of what educational leadership is. Then I highlighted on the kind of leadership that was in existence before COVID-19. I went ahead to touch on the challenges that were faced by school leaders during the pandemic. Then lastly, I came to the main focus, that is the paradigm shift in educational leadership due to COVID-19, where I touch on 4 main issues, that is the change in policies and practices of educational leaders, change in leaders' roles, change in budget planning of educational leaders, and lastly, change in the leadership skills. So in conclusion, we would like to conclude by posing a question: that is the shift calling for a new leadership theory in education? Are we really dealing with a new leadership paradigm, or is the pandemic the structural break that accelerated the paradigms that were already in place, but perhaps not fully accepted? So basing our argument on what Cortez and Posner 2002 said, that the basic principles of leadership are the same and do not change, but the context is different. So in our own opinion, we think that COVID-19 did not engender any new set of leadership theories, but it is an amalgam of the already existing transactional and transformational leadership frameworks. Again, COVID-19 is the wake-up call that is calling on leaders that the kind of leadership style prevalent in our top-down bureaucratic educational institutions, that is the control and command type of leadership, is outdated. A new definition of leadership is evolving. So there is the need for leaders in the various educational institutions to adapt the various theories of leadership, that is the trait, behavioral, transactional, transformational, among other theories, based on the context that they faced in the school setting, in order to be able to lead the educational institution in a balanced and an effective way. 3 key issues were also identified: that COVID-19 is a wake-up call for educational leaders to reimagine and build an educational system that is equitable, where the needed conditions and support for teaching and learning to progress in the various schools and homes are provided. There is also the need for educational leaders, teachers, and the school in general to become effective by being equipped with the needed resources that they would be able to provide to students based on each level of the need of students. Again, there is the need for educational leaders to provide educational services that are well managed, safe, and free of violence, and that ensure continuity in the learning process between the school, the home, community, and the nation at large. Thank you very much for the audience. And these are some references that we used as part of our presentation. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Oduro and Ms. Amartey for that brilliant delivery of your presentation and for the insights that you've shared. Participants, I believe that we've been educated. We have learned a lot from this presentation. And this is the time that if we have questions, we want to make some comments or contribution, the floor is all open. Kindly raise your hand up, and at the appropriate time, you'll be called to make your contribution. You can also type your question in the chat box, and I will appropriately read it for them to answer. So I have a few questions of my own. Well, I can see your hand up. I would call you very soon, Mr. Adokwe. But my first question, and which I don't know who is going to answer, but so with all that you've said and with your research that you did, in what ways does the paradigm shift triggered by COVID-19 call for a new leadership theory in education? I repeat that. In what ways does the paradigm shift triggered by COVID-19 call for a new leadership theory in education? Dorcas and Abigail. Please answering my question.
Ms. Roslyn.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the question. I think we answered that as part of our conclusion, where we said that the pandemic is not calling for a new set of theories, but it is just an amalgam of the already existing transactional and transformational leadership theories and style. However, there is the need for leaders in the various educational institutions to look at the context, that is the issue on grounds, and utilize the kind of theory that would help solve that issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Oduro. I don't know if you're a doctor or a Mrs., forgive me. So I have the name as Amos Adokwe. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
It's just a contribution. Congratulations. Okay. Congratulations to Mrs. Abigail Oduro and Ms. Dorcas Amartey. We thank them for the excellent job they have done. And we have learned a lot from them. And we think educational leadership should take whatever comments and suggestions they have made so that it will improve our education calendar. Because right now, it is very good to use the digital. At first, we have not been using the Zoom and all, the other digital methods. So we thank them for their work done. And we pray that more of those educations will come on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comment. And I've also received some comments in the chat box, and I would read them. So Prince Okwa says, excellent presentation to both of you. I also have very brilliant delivery. We are grateful, and it's by Indemba. I can read the rest of the names, but I believe that you've seen them. Then I have Professor Martins, Fabuni Martins, who is a professor in educational leadership at IEPA, and he says that I commend the two presenters for the impressive presentation, more grace and grace. So that's a feather in your cap. And Sefam, who I believe is your colleague, also says that well done, colleagues. So yeah, I told you that the two are very resourceful. I also have Samuel, who says that congrats, Dorcas and Abigail. Grace Oduro has commented, very excellent presentation. And I have Memuna, who says thumbs up for the brilliant presentation. Kezia says very informative. Victoria Quay says great presentation, congratulations. Joanna says, Mrs. Abigail and Miss Dorcas, well done. And we admire the confidence and knowledge. And one Dorcas, your namesake, says excellent presentation. And Linda says excellent work done. So those are the comments I've received so far. Are there any other questions, contributions, comments? I know I have some of your lecturers, professors, and doctors online here. I don't know if there are any comments or contributions, or if the presenters themselves want to make some extra comments and contributions. So the floor is open. But whilst we're waiting for comment and presentation, Abigail, I read on your profile that you've written a paper entitled The Influence of Social Media on Students' Essay Writing. Can you share a bit of insight on that? Because it's very, very important, especially in today's technological world where everything is online and social media seems to be what is driving every student. So can you share a little bit of insight whilst we come back to the topic for today?
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Roslyn. I'm so excited. I have my co-writer here with me, and she goes by the name Dorcas Cranton. So it was basically about how social media influence student essay writing, looking at how we've been influenced by social media of late. So we wanted to find out its impact on student essay writing. And based on our findings, we got to know that due to social media, most students usually use the shorthand form of writing in their essays and also in academic writing. So basically that was what the research was about. And again, it also affected their academic performance because it had influence on their spelling as well. So
Well, thank you, Abigail, for that. You said your co-writer was online. I don't know if she would want to also shed a little bit light on it, but I have a hand up. Kezia Amartey. So can you unmute and give your comments or ask your question? Kezia.
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And also congrats to your presenters as well. So this is my first time joining a webinar from your institution. And I would commend you that it is a great webinar, but then also I would like to know how we would access this presentation after, and then subsequent presentations also, how would we be able to know if there are any in the future? Because if I hadn't seen the flyer from a friend, I wouldn't have been able to join. So maybe you might have your social media handles or anywhere we can follow up for future presentations. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Kezia, for that. So yes, we are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn as IEPA-UCC. So any of this, you can find us on social media, IEPA-UCC. So you can find us, and day in, day out, we are posting educational leadership administration and planning information there, as well as webinars and events. So kindly follow us and get in tune with what we are doing at IEPA. Additionally, for our webinar series, it happens the last Thursday of every month. So it's the last Thursday of every month. And this information is shared on our social media pages. So you can find it, and it's also available on our website. Usually when the information goes for the webinar, there's a registration link that if you click and register, we get your details, and we use that to send you communication on other upcoming webinars and also symposia that the institutes will be holding. So I would entreat you to visit our website, which is www.iepA.ucc.edu.gh, and you can find more information about that, or follow our any of our social media links, whether on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. So thank you. I believe that that information will help. I also see your hand up. Before I call you, Sapashi, I think there are a few comments which I'd like to read. So I have Elvis says, good presentation. I have Professor Michael Amartey says, excellent presentation, great insights into education in Ghana. And he's a professor of administration at IEPA. And Abigail, I think you have a friend from Beijing, China, who says, congratulations and well done. So from Beijing, China. And Joanna has a question. So let's pay attention. So now that the COVID is on the low in Ghana and we are not mandated to be cautious, going back to the classroom, will things be the same for both students and teachers? And I repeat that. Now that COVID is on the low in Ghana and we are not mandated to be cautious, going back to the classroom, will things be the same for both students and teachers? So who would take that?
Thank you very much for that question. At His Excellency the President of the Republic, knowing very well that there's going to be the possibility of things to be the same, is still advocating that all and sundry should get vaccinated. And we have totally not erased all the COVID-19 protocols. But institutions are still to make available some of the directives during teaching and learning. That is the Veronica buckets and water and sanitizers. But we still need to get vaccinated because of the possibility of us going back to the classroom and things may be the same.
Yes, thank you, Dorcas. We're getting terrible feedback from your end, so I think you should check your sound. But we heard you. Abigail, is there something you want to add to that?
Okay, I think my co-presenter has said it all. However, there is the need for educational leaders in the various educational institutions to organize some in-service training for teachers and even parents as well, so that they would be well abreast with the new set of education that is involving in the educational institution. And also leaders need to incorporate the various theories as we already highlighted on, so that the educational system could change for the better. And even with regards to our conclusion, the 3 issues that we highlighted on, providing an equitable form of education, and also educational system being effective in such a way that the needs of students are provided, and also they providing educational services that ensure continuity in the home, the community, and the nation at large. The educational leaders should take notice of these things, as it would help improve education for the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abigail. I think I failed to respond to one of the questions that Kezia asked as to how you're going to get the presentations and also recordings of earlier webinars. So if you registered for this webinar, it means we have your email, and at the end, probably by early next week, we're going to email you the slides. If you didn't, unfortunately, we don't have your email, but all our webinars are populated on our YouTube page. So earlier webinars that we've had is on our YouTube page, and it's still the handle IEPA-UCC. So you can go there and listen to them. And at the appropriate time, once we get the recording, we're going to put this also on YouTube. Thank you. I can see your hand up. Mr. Adokwe, I know you want to ask a question, but hold on for that. Sir Kwashi, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Abigail and Mrs. Dorcas. My question is, now we have seen that COVID-19 has brought a lot of paradigm shifts, and now our children are used to the internet. So our children are taken away from us. They will be on the internet sometime from the morning to the evening. So how can we manage them? So my question is, how can we manage them so that they will not take a long time on their phones? I know that sometimes there is an effect on the being on phone for a very long time. So how can we go about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Kwashi. Over to you, presenters.
Thank you very much for the question. But I think here the responsibility lies on the parents, because if the usage of the phone is at home, then of course the parents must educate the child in the appropriate use of the internet. And also it could be possible that the parents could take it out to the school for them to have a session in class whereby they are taken through when they
Hello. Happy. Hello. Dorcas.
Hello, can you hear me?
I think you got frozen, so yeah, now I can hear you.
I talked about him using 2 approaches. One, a part to be played by the parent or the guardian, and then the other, taking it up to the school, whereby we have our teachers educating the students as to the appropriate use of the internet and also the mobile phones.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think I'll just like to add a little bit to it. Whether we like it or not, we are in a technological world, and our children, what we call the generation Z, are always glued to their phone. As parents, as caregivers, we need to sit down with them and schedule appropriate times for them to be on the internet, on their phones. And that means that when that time is up, we need to take their phones from them so they can be engaged in other activities. Because research have shown that when you are glued to your phone for such a long time, it has effects on your eyes, it has effects on your brains, it also have effects on your sleep. So it's very important that as parents and caregivers, we allocate time for them to be on their phones and also time to get away from their phones to be engaged in other social activities like taking a walk, having a family game, so that they can recalibrate their brains. So we all have a responsibility to do that. And this has to be done, I mean, collaboratively with them so that they see that it's not just a matter of them being punished by taking their phones and laptops and tablets away from them, but also it is for their well-being. So that's what I needed to add to that. I have a few comments coming in, but I'll read that. Mr. Adokwe, can you ask your question? Then I'll come to you, Stephen.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to ask whether the online graduation, has it helped us socially? Because we know when there is graduation, that is where parents, lecturers, students come to mingle and, cheer up. But if it is done online, it's very difficult. So I want them to throw more light on that for us.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much for your question. But I think the frequent use of social media answers your question. Just as we socialize on the various platforms is the same as the online graduation. So the usage of social media and connecting with friends in doing other daily activities is the same way as the online graduation. You get to meet your friends online as well. So if you could apply the ways and means by which you get connected to your friends via the social media handles, is the same way you could also get connected to your friends via the virtual graduation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. Before I come to you, Stephen, there's a question online, which is, due to the paradigm shift, should I, as a teacher, permit the use of phones in Ghanaian basic schools? Due to the paradigm shift, should I, as a teacher, permit the use of mobile phones in basic school?
Hello, my colleague has responded to it in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Abigail. Let me find that. Oh, Abigail, Dorcas, can you read that response? Because sometimes it's good to hear it. So.
Very well. She says that, no, I think we should not advocate for the use of mobile phones in school. However, teachers, especially ICT, could utilize the ICT sessions or periods for students to make good use of the internet and access information that they need.
Great, thank you. Stefan, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so it's not a question. I wanted to add to the issue of allowing our children staying on the internet and social media for a long time. We have this popular saying that the ship that brought the Bible also brought the schnapp and other things to it. And that same ship was carrying slaves across board. That tells you that to every good thing, there's a bad side to it. And now as parents, you notice that aside the children staying longer hours on the tablet or on social media, they also had issues with security, where our children were easily exposed to certain things that they ideally wouldn't have been exposed to. So to counteract that, we are supposed to make sure that as a parent, you also learn ahead in terms of how to deal with these issues, how to parent control your gadgets so that you keep your children safe, how to even time, just like our moderator indicated, how to even time the children for how long they will stay on their tablets for. Another issue that came up with the usage of gadgets was also that you noticed that after the COVID, some children were struggling to read hard copy materials. When you give them work or reading books to use, they want to do everything on their tablets. It is because they became used to the idea of just going on their tablets, the music and the activity-oriented nature of everything that they were looking at. So one way of dealing with that is blending it for them from the word go. Let them experience the hard copy as well, and let them experience the tablets as they move on. And so by doing that, you give them that synchronize, the word that my colleague used, Dorcas, synchronized method of studying so that they'll get used to the tablet, get the best of the technology, and then get the best of the traditional way. Internet and ICT and online studies has come to stay. We have to make sure that we take good use of it, or make good use of it for our children and for ourselves. So we need to be mindful of those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that insightful contribution. And I think that answers your question, Samuel Amegache, because you asked that, please, going forward, will you recommend learning by only virtual means or by blended approach, which involves both virtual and face-to-face interaction? And the contribution made by Stefan clearly says that blended approach is the way to go. You know, we need both. We need the virtual as well as the hard copy. So it's very important that we blend it in that regard. So thank you. There was a question on when IEPA is starting its master's program. There's a question on when IEPA is starting its master's program. Forms are currently ongoing, being sold. So kindly check online in the UCC website, because that we do, IEPA does as a subset of the whole university. So because we are still part of the University of Cape Coast. So check the UCC website and also our various contact points to buy forms and fill appropriately. And I believe that the next academic year starts in January. So that's for our information. Okay, I think that we've done well with time. And it's been an insightful presentation. I've learned a lot. And I believe that from your comments and your contributions, you've also learned a lot. So I'm not going to be an African and go beyond time, even though we started way in time. I'm going to be very British and say that it's been a good time spent online with all of you. And once again, thank you very much, Mrs. Oduro and Ms. Amartey for that insightful presentation. And you're all going to get, if you registered, you're going to get that in your email. If you didn't, probably give us a week or two and you can visit our YouTube channel to watch that. Please tell a friend to tell a friend and tell a friend, because the last Thursday of every month, we bring you resource persons in various dynamics of education, either leadership planning or administration or any other related issues for them to discuss and give us insights. That's the whole idea, so that we all learn together. And as I indicated from the beginning of this, if you need a certificate, you can send us an email at iepa.ocpr@ucc.edu.gh. It's in the chat. And the certificate is 100 Ghana cedis. You get a digital one and you can pay by Momo. 100 cedis, you don't pay levy. So yeah, so it's still 100. To 020-772 8812. And the name on the account is Mr. Rex Donto. So all too soon, we've come to the end of the May edition of our webinar. There's one last thing I would want majority of us to do, and that's if we can show our faces in the camera so that we take a selfie. That's the only way. So if you can, yes, show yourself so that I can see your beautiful and handsome faces, so that I can take a screenshot for posterity on this webinar. So I'm going to count up to 5 and make sure that a lot of people have their cameras on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say cheese. Okay, I'm taking another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say cheese. So thank you very much. And until we meet again next month, let's remember that COVID, even though it's still on the low, is still there. Let's get immunized, get your shots. Let's wear our face masks when we're going to crowded places, especially the hospitals and laboratories. And let's all social distance and try and keep safe. Until we meet again, ciao, au revoir. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.